Welcome to Thank You Half Hour. I am your host, Tom Christopher Warren, and I am so lucky to have as our guest today someone I've known for quite a while. We worked together many years ago. You'll recognize her from Hairspray, the musical on Broadway, Legally Blonde on Broadway, recently The Cottage on Broadway, TV, How I Met Your Mother, and Fairly Oddparents, Fairly Odder, TV star, film star, Broadway star, mom, farmer, philanthropist, podcast star herself, Laura BellBundy. Thank you so much for joining me today. I am thrilled to see your face.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. For context, Laura and I ran into each other recently. I had the very great pleasure of seeing your work in The Cottage on Broadway a few weeks ago, and we reconnected after the show, got to catch up a little bit. I explained that I'm doing this podcast. You very graciously said you'd come on and chat with me for a little bit. But it's awesome to see. You were a kid when we worked together. What were you, 16?
17.
17. I remember you were finishing, we did Gypsy at Papermill Playhouse, and you were finishing up the run and then going into your high school production of Damn Yankees.
Yes.
Right? Yeah.
Well, I could only do splits on the left side.
Oh, no.
When we did.
I remember the splits, yeah.
So I had to turn a certain way for me to do my Dainty June splits only on the left side, even though I'm right-handed. But yes, I do recall that. And I went in to do, I think we were doing Senior Night Live.
Yeah.
And then I think we had Damn Yankees.
Yep.
And I was Lola.
I feel like you were doing or maybe it was shortly thereafter that you were starting some workshops for Hairspray or readings, or like it wasn't long thereafter that the development of that project started. Is that right?
Well, if in the time flies of it all, yes. So we finished doing Gypsy. I ended up doing a workshop of this movie that ended up becoming Camp, the movie.
Yeah.
And that's how I was introduced to Bernie Telsey Casting.
Okay.
And because at the time, like, they were doing Rent and they were kind of new. And so I auditioned for Camp, and it was like the character of the bitch. And then when I was 19, a few years later, which I was doing a soap opera at the time, and I was living in New York again, because when we did Gypsy together, I was still living in Kentucky, and I was going to school in Kentucky. And then I stayed out of school to do Gypsy. And by the way, my boyfriend broke up with me while we're doing Gypsy.
Oh, no.
Because he was already in college, and he was like, yeah, no, I can't do this long distance thing and be in college. What a jerk. Anyway. Yeah. So I was doing this soap opera, and I was 19, and I got a call from my agent got a call from Bernie Telsey's office saying that there was an audition for the first reading of a musical called Hairspray based on the John Waters movie. And what they didn't realize is that how obsessed I actually had been with that movie as a child. And that I used to, the summer I was 8, I watched that movie over and over and over again at lunch while I ate my TV dinner.
I love it. And I remember loving that you were slotted into this role of the bitch, because you were so kind and empathetic. And at 17, you were always in the boys' dressing room, kind of kikiing with us and gossiping and having fun and so much laughter. And the idea of you playing this horrid little bitch was so delicious and fun. And of course, you were magnificent in the role, and it just incredible. But you had already been established as an actor from, how old were you with Ruthless? Ruthless was off Broadway, a Drama Desk nomination, Outer Critics Circle, and what were you, 10?
I was 10 when it opened and 11 when it closed, yeah.
What do you do with a Drama Desk nomination at 10 years old? How do you frame that in your head, particularly when you're not from New York and you started in the pageant world, and then suddenly you find yourself this award-winning, award-nominated child star in New York?
I didn't know what a Drama Desk was. I mean, at 11, 12, you're like, I think I was nominated when I was 11, and I didn't know what it was. It's not a Tony, so.
Right. I mean, that would come later.
Now it's like a big deal. And I was like, oh my God, I can't believe, and when you are nominated for a leading actress for Drama Desk, you are in the same category as actors who are on Broadway. Of course, I didn't get it. I didn't get it, and I didn't even go to the awards show.
Did you not?
I was in Kentucky. And then one of them, I was asked to do like a little hosting thing, and I had the chicken pox. I think it was Outer Critics Circle. I was supposed to do something, and the Obie Awards, and I had the chicken pox.
Unbelievable. I mean, did you have a sense of what it, having seen Ruthless many times, because a friend of mine was playing piano at the time, he was my vocal coach. So whenever there were tickets available, he would offer me tickets. So I probably saw it 15 times. Now, I knew that this 10-year-old kid was somehow a part of the camp gay zeitgeist already. Did you, and I also recognized how unbearably intelligent your performance was, like way beyond your years. Did you have a sense of what the tone of that play was to the zeitgeist, to the gay community, to, all of the references to Gypsy and Bad Seed and the movies of the 40s? What was that like for you?
So I watched all of the movies that it was referencing and parroting.
Yeah.
And as a little kid, I learned how to sing from mimicking. And I was a mimic. Totally was a mimic.
Yeah.
So for summer, I came back from New York, and I had like a whole show of like every person I had ever seen in New York. And I would like charge my mom's friends and like.
Who were you mimicking? Who were you learning how to sing from?
I was playing like cab drivers, homeless people, prostitutes, all the stuff in New York.
Just this Kentucky girl.
I worked in a deli.
Yes.
I mean, you name it. I played all the characters. Okay. And as a kid, I was listening to like Julie Andrews and Judy Garland and Liza Minnelli or Dolly Parton. And I was trying to I thought I had to sing exactly like them.
Wow.
So that's how I learned how to sing and act. I was a mimic first, which served me well in terms of doing a show that was essentially a spoof.
Yeah, yeah.
Was a type of parody and a campy. And also, if I need to repeat, I watched John Waters' Hairspray on repeat at 8 years old.
Right. That does track.
So I really am a gay man trapped in the body of John Bonet.
100%.
Okay. So it was just like a homecoming to do Ruthless for me. You know what I mean? Like me finding my tribe and my people. And at the time, honestly, it wasn't like a stretch. It was just a normal, it felt like a normal next step was to do a musical with a drag queen in it where I played a murderer and people laughed. Like that just felt like, and I watched all those black and white movies. Yeah. I watched The Bad Seed. I watched All About Eve. Of course, I had seen Gypsy 1,000 times and every version of Gypsy I could get my hands on. And anything that Joel Paley, who was the writer-director, had suggested that I watch. And actually, Ruthless was based on The Bad Seed first in a musical they wrote called Seedy, and they couldn't secure the rights.
Oh. And
so they changed it to Ruthless. And so at first it was about the penmanship medal, and then I killed a little boy. Yeah. And then it became about, they changed the whole thing to a girl in this whole show, and she kills the other little girl, Louise Lerman, for the part of Pippi. And so... but it had all of the juiciness of The Bad Seed that I had watched and imitated.
Sure.
And but it had just the show business of Gypsy and All About Eve and any sort of those older movies. I also was obsessed with like all the Marilyn Monroe movies growing up. And I have always had a passion for that old Hollywood style.
Yeah.
Even as a young kid. So it was kind of natural, Tom. It's very weird to say that this was something that was natural for a 10-year-old, but it was. And, I was this little girl from Kentucky and I ended up doing my first gay pride parade at 10.
Well, you're delivering those jokes. It's very well written and you're landing those jokes. And I remember watching them going, why does she understand these? Why does she have such a keen understanding of the comedic tone of this play? It's wild. And who are your understudies? Remind me.
Britney Spears was,
I've heard of her.
one of my first understudies, and then Natalie Portman.
Sure.
After Brittany.
Hacks. Absolute hacks. Just part of this wild off-Broadway, because we're not even talking about, Midtown Manhattan. We're talking about this 10-year-old in Greenwich Village, early 90s.
1991,
Yeah.
92.
Yeah, like that. Because I remember the Village in 1991 and 92. I was working in piano bars and, going to Gay Pride myself and doing all those things. And you just had this, like, anchor into the understanding of that play. It was just spectacular. And I've seen many productions. I've done the show. And it's never quite what that original company found. It was just remarkable. Although I love the cast recording from the LA production. I love it.
Yeah,
love it.
It's great. That's a bummer. I'm sad I'm not on that.
Yeah.
But I will say Joel Paley like spoon-fed me comedic timing for sure. And I learned a lot from Donna English and Joel Vig and Denise Lore, and Susan Manser was hysterical, Joanne Baum, all those people. I was watching them like a hawk.
Yeah, that tracks. We both learn from watching people around us who are extraordinary. And, not everybody wants to do that. Not everybody knows to do that. But my eyes were, eagle-eyed through my whole youth. And we did Gypsy together with Betty Buckley and Deborah Gibson and an incredible cast of people. And we all understood that we were surrounded by hurricane performers and watched them keenly and learned from Lenny Wolpe and learned from Anna McNeely and just these remarkable Broadway veterans and storytellers, Yeah, just incredible. And then Hairspray and Legally Blonde. How did Legally Blonde being aired on MTV change the sort of trajectory, or did it, of your career? The idea, because back then, now we see Broadway televised on Broadway HD or National Theater at Home. We have platforms. Obviously, we all have, social media where bootlegs are very popular, but the airing of a currently running Broadway musical on a platform like MTV, to my knowledge, had not really been done other than sort of PBS. What did that do to change the game for you?
At the time, I wasn't sure. At the time, it was just kind of wild that they were going to tape our show. And it ended up getting like 20 million viewers in one weekend. And then it had like 2 more airings after that. They could air it 4 times on a weekend, and then there was 2 other times, but it was Thanksgiving weekend.
Oh, wow.
There was a Broadway strike going on. So all these people had come to see Broadway shows in New York, and they couldn't see anything, but they could turn on MTV and watch Legally Blonde. And
wow.
So that was crazy too, that, that timing of that. But there was no Twitter at the time. There wasn't Instagram. Facebook was just starting. So I believe that if there had been those other social media elements, that even more would have blown up, because it did so well that when I gave my notice for the show, MTV did a reality show to find my replacement, which also has like this culty following fan base even to this day. At the time, I'm not sure if it elevated. It might have. I ended up getting a record deal after that and moving to Nashville when I left the show. I know that it definitely helped to have had that success on MTV.
Yeah.
Because it was successful there. But what I would say has been the most impactful is that that taping of MTV made its way to YouTube. And unauthorized, illegal versions of this are on YouTube.
Oh, wow.
Now, you could say, I'm not saying get it down. Not at all.
Sure.
I think they need to actually, Viacom, or whoever needs to put this thing on Paramount Plus and give it a proper,
100%.
We're making it streamable now, because it has been watched millions and millions of times.
Illegally.
By young kids that were not even alive when I did the show, or were so young they could have never seen it, but they know my performance. And that is what I would say has been the most impactful about that taping, is that I'll have kids that are like 17 years old, meeting me at the stage door now going, that you're Legally Blonde changed my life. I watch it all the time. I listen to you. I played the thing. This was what made me want to be an actor. and they were too young to have seen me in the show. They were 2 years old.
Oh, that's bananas.
So that's what I think is wonderful about it's archiving these shows.
Yeah, I agree. And you directed a production of Legally Blonde in Lexington, right?
I did. I co-directed a production of Legally Blonde, yes.
Amazing. Yeah, one of our, I've spent a long time in The Lion King, and one of our Simbas, he's currently on the road, was in that production, Darian Sanders. And so, yeah, he's become a very dear friend. So are you hoping to do more directing moving forward? Did you like it?
I did like it.
Yeah.
Doing something in 2 weeks is too fast for me.
Yeah, totally.
I like to dig in and do real scene work.
Yeah.
I like that part. That's the part I like. Rushing something, putting it up and being like, yeah, get it together, guys. Great. That's not my style. And you kind of have to live in the tech aspects of it. Yeah. And I prefer to live in the scene work part of it. And allowing actors to organically find things versus having to force them to do it a certain way, because that's not how I like to be directed. Right. So, but ours was thrown together really fast, and that's just how it worked. So, if yes, I would be interested in it. I have, done some directing of concerts and various things, but most of the directing I've done has been sketch comedy, or music videos. Amazing. And I love directing music videos. Really? I like conceptualizing and directing music videos and coming up with high concept versions of the idea of the song.
That's amazing. Have you worked with, or do you know Nina West?
I do.
Okay. I figured through the Hairspray ether or whatever, the one music video I did was one of Nina's videos, because she's a very dear friend and lives here in Columbus and was on the podcast. And the whole world of filming that video was so foreign to me and so fun and so campy, because it's, Nina. It was just a riot. What do you love about directing music videos?
I love telling stories with music. It doesn't really matter in what format it is, whether it's we're doing a musical and we're telling a story with music and we're doing a musical number, or I'm writing a song and I'm telling a story with music, or I'm then elevating that song by giving a visual aspect to it that's telling an adjacent story or going deeper into what the song is saying. I love the visual component to music.
We grew up on those, MTV was invented when we were coming up. So yeah, that makes sense.
Exactly. So I really dig that. And I also watched a lot of musical movies as a kid and obviously did musicals, but I see pictures, even when I'm writing a song, I see pictures in my head. And then I like to have the opportunity to go and make that into a music video. And sometimes it's very, very high concept. I have a song called American Girl, and that's a very, very high concept music video. It's probably my favorite music video that I've done. And then some are just I did a commercial campaign music video for Barefoot Wines once with a bunch of comedians in it. And it was a musical number and it was really fun and silly. And, that's a little different.
I love it. I love it. Congratulations are in order, by the way. We referenced The Cottage, but I saw it a couple of weeks ago. It was spectacular. Funny, A-list cast, brilliant writing. Design was gorgeous. Just a bunch of people, people would ask me, well, what's it about? And I said, well, there's no deep message, but it's everybody working at the top of their game to give us heightened comedy that is just delicious at every level. You were really stunning in that.
Thank you. Yeah. It was really fun.
It looked hard work, but really fun.
Yeah, it's definitely fast paced. I mean, for a play, it's a lot like a musical because it's moving at such a rapid pace, and you can if you drop the baton, we lose the audience, and so it was a lot. I was definitely had to stay focused. I couldn't think about dinner.
Yeah,
No.
yeah, right. Like, and your character also grew the most during the course of the play. So you had to be so present at every minute just to allow for your character's arc to sort of organically evolve. And
Yes.
I hadn't read it. I had no frame of reference for it. I know Sandy from living in Maplewood. We were sort of neighbors, town neighbors, and had known of each other. So I knew her writing. Certainly, I'd seen Clue, which was magnificent, but I didn't know what this play was, and I went in blind. And the show curtain right away, we're getting little Easter eggs in the show curtain, and we're like, okay, pay attention. This shit's funny. And sure enough, and it's like this just steamroller of comedy beginning to end, and every single performance. I heard your podcast recently with Lily Cooper, and we're going to talk about your podcast because I love it. Every single one of you, top of your game. And then the Wicked reunion. How was that?
We closed the Cottage on Sunday, and we had the 20-year Wicked reunion on Monday. I was like, by Tuesday, I was like, ooh.
I don't even know how you functioned after all of that. I mean, closing a Broadway show, moving back into your house, the Wicked, is a part of the zeitgeist for all of us, and all of you who gathered together to celebrate the 20th anniversary. Just wild. For listeners who don't know, Laura Bell played Glinda and stood by for, was it Kristen?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. For Kristen in Wicked for what, a year?
Almost a year.
Yeah.
I'd say it was about 9 months.
Yeah.
8 or 9 months.
Yeah. How was it revisiting it? How was it? Had you seen it since?
You know what? I didn't go to the actual show because I had something else I had to do that night. I was just around for the reunion part to say hi to everybody. But I didn't actually go sit in the audience and watch the show. And no, I have not seen it since I was in it.
Really?
No, I saw it enough. I was a standby.
Yeah,
All
sure.
I did was watch the show.
I know it. I know it well.
I don't need to see it again.
Well, if you change your mind, it's not going anywhere anytime soon.
Well, you know what? I'm going to take my son.
Great.
Because he loves the song Popular. He's 4. He loves it. And he always sees the poster and goes, that's popular.
Yeah.
And so I think maybe when he turns 5, he's really going to dig it. And he kind of likes scary things. So I think he'll kind of dig it, that part too.
Perfect. Yeah.
So, which is weird because when I was his age, I didn't like anything scary. This kid watches like Nightmare Before Christmas and Coraline and all these crazy things.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. I can't do scary things. That's not my thing.
So I think I'm going to take Huck, and I'm sure it will be very nostalgic, and I'm sure I'll love it, and I'm sure I won't stop singing. And then he'll be like, "Mommy, stop singing, start the song again."
I'm sure that reunion, all of those women, all of the, and obviously the male presenting cast members as well, but all of those Glindas and Elphabas that are part of this thing that has become part of the zeitgeist. Like, it's just that story, that musical, that score is a part of the ether now. It's hard to believe it's been 20 years, but to take a trope, The Wicked Witch of the West, which is already a part of the zeitgeist, and then re-examine it, give her an origin story, exist in novel form. And I've always loved the novel, but
me too.
Yeah. Maguire's book is just beautiful, but to then take that and give it new form in musical, and then suddenly every little girl knows Popular. Every little girl knows Defying Gravity, and a whole lot of little boys. It's just become this remarkable part of the ether. That's very cool.
Mm-hmm.
And then did you see some old friends at the reunion that you hadn't seen in a while?
I did. Yes.
Who'd you reconnect
I was
with?
most excited to see, I was really close with Andrew Palermo when it was going, and then Manny Herrera and I hadn't seen each other in a long, long time. We also did Legally Blonde together.
Oh, wow.
And so I was so excited to see him. And Eden Espinoza and I shared a dressing room together. So I was excited to see, I saw her. Adina Alexander had done Ruthless with me. We did.
No.
She played the teacher after Susan Manser, and we did Wicked together.
Oh, that's incredible. That is incredible.
It was wild. Like, she was like the second person I saw, and I was like, whoa, we go back. We go back 30 years.
Just wild. I don't feel my age, but then I look at my friends and I'm like, oh, we actually have thousands of years cumulatively of traction between us in this business, and we share each other's stories. That's the whole purpose of this podcast, or I guess the whole inception of the podcast, was just to hear my pals' stories, because we've all done so much and been so many places and reached so many people. And I'm curious to know what inspires folks to stay in this industry, because it's not easy, and how they choose to inspire moving forward. You and I talked about this camp that you were in development, and you're just the fact that you are an educator and that you are so devoted to helping kids to grow and learn about themselves and become artists and find their own artistic voices. I think that's thrilling. Do you love that?
I do. I think it's important for us as human beings to have tools to be creative.
Yeah.
Because being inspired is in spirit, right? So it's like an act of God.
Yeah.
To create. And in however you want to look at it spiritually, it's spiritual to create out of nothing something, and to be a part of an idea taking form, or a character coming to life.
Yeah.
When you were a part of something like that, that's magic.
It is.
And also having an outlet for self-expression, which is what the performing arts does so beautifully for so many people. It's a great therapy. It's a wonderful thing to have. It's wonderful to have a character who has to be angry or has to be a bitch, so those things can come out in you.
Right.
We all have lightness and we all have darkness, but we spend 75% of the time in the light, right? Trying to be nice to people, trying to be kind, when we've got all this other stuff we've got to source through. So when we have, writing that we can do to get things out, and those deep and inner thoughts, or we've got acting that we can do, or we can cry when life doesn't allow us to do it, that's wonderful. So, to be able to work with a young person who is honing their ability to express themselves, to understand their own emotions, to understand human behavior and know how to emulate that again, to understand the laws of the universe. Because there are laws and they apply to acting. All positive emotions, we go up. Negative emotions bring us down. When we want something, we lean forward. When we don't, we lean back. So do our characters. So this is universal body language. You can understand those things not only to better your work and your acting, but to better your relationships by being able to read people better. So there are these life skills you get from learning how to be a better actor, and learn to listen by becoming a musician. There are just great things about it, whether or not you want to have a career in the performing arts or not. But I also believe, we're coming into a time where we're going to have AI doing a lot of things for us.
Right.
But the imaginative people, the creative people, imagining things that haven't been imagined yet, that's the people that will survive.
That's right.
And so by working with people in the performing arts, and cultivating the imagination, that is everything, and I love it. I love teaching and mentoring and discovering my own process. Like, I didn't even really know what my own process was until I began to teach it, and I started to break it down.
That makes perfect sense.
And then it was like, oh yeah, I guess this is what I do. And this is how I've been learning the last number of years. And who thought I did it like that? But I guess it is, but, and it's really, I just love it. And, I live on a farm, and we have another farm down the road, a mile and a half away from we have a farm with sheep and goats. And then we have another farm with a lot of barns on it, which I'm looking to make a Broadway camp. Or a camp, an educational place for the performing arts, but high level, learn from Broadway people, or learn from the teachers of Broadway stars. And, really, I like to do this. You ask like, what makes you stay?
Mm-hmm.
I think it's really important to identify why you do this.
Yep.
Because it isn't easy. We can be jobless for years, and then we can be on the top of the world, and then boom. And how I look at it is, I like to play. I've identified why I do this is because I like to play, and I like to be an idiot, and I like to have an excuse to be a fool. And acting is playing to me. It's doing plays or playing music. It's playing. And even when I'm doing an audition, it's an opportunity to play. Well, my chair's going to go here, and I'm going to grab this thing, and that's going to be there, and this is going to pretend like the car is taking off. And you know what I mean? It's playing. It's imaginative. And so I look at it, it's like, this is my opportunity to play. It's not my job I'm trying to get. I'm just going to play for an hour.
Yeah.
Yeah. And when I go on stage and do the Cottage, I'm definitely playing.
Oh, God, I howled. Okay. Tell me about what inspired you to start this podcast with Shay. Women of Tomorrow listeners, listen, please. It's important. It's remarkable. I've recently listened to the Lily Cooper episode that I mentioned, and just a couple of days ago listened to the episode about abortion access. And we're in a world that is completely upside down and bananas. And you have started this conversation, and I would love to know more about it.
So we wrote an album called Women of Tomorrow, and every song delves into a different issue women are facing today.
Right. And
it also celebrates how far we've come. But in the songs that are dealing with, let's say, breaking the glass ceiling or women and money, we go deeper into the history of those things on the podcast, deeper than we can go in 3.5 minutes in a song.
Sure.
And so we'll go into the history of money. Well, when women became property to when women could own property to, and we will give the trajectory, and then we'll have a guest on to talk about equality and financial independence, and how are we looking today, and how can we move further towards equality and equity.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how we created the podcast, with sort of the playlist of the album involved. And now we've sort of gone beyond, because we've done more episodes than we had songs. Whether we're diving into the history of women and sex, whether we're diving into abortion access or domestic violence, or you name it, we're trying to give people the facts, right? And and open the door to a conversation, right? Like, I don't know everything about women's history and everything about women's issues, but I care about them. And it is my job to be informed. So if I can provide that to someone and say, hey, okay, you want to know why we over apologize as women? We over apologize because of the violence that has been taken against us since, Mesopotamia, 2400 BC.
Right.
Earliest known law code stated if a woman speaks out of turn, her teeth will be smashed by a brick. That's the first piece of law we have in existence in civilization. These are the kind of laws written. Unreal. So it was normal to just beat a woman into submission, which is why women, it's in the subconscious, right? In our collective conscious, we want you to know that we're fine. You don't need to. I'm so sorry. I have a question. I'm so sorry. Please don't beat me. Right? We try to be disarming. We try to say, I'm not a threat. And we see what happens to women when they come at things with confidence and unapologetically.
Right.
And we see what words that they're called. And right.
Yeah.
And it is aggressive.
It is, and it is an absolute double standard.
Yeah, it's an absolute double standard. But it's good for us to know these things. So we can say, well, we are living in a time where we don't need to apologize as much, and we don't need to be as scared as often, and we can begin to change these behaviors. So the podcast also serves as a way for us to look at how we are behaving as women in society and go, is this behavior serving us and why are we doing it? But yeah, so if you want to learn about the issues that impact women and women's history, watch Women. I mean, you can listen to our podcast on the Broadway Podcast Network, Women of Tomorrow, and then our website, Women of Tomorrow. We spell women with an X, WOMXN.
Great.
So anyone who identifies as a woman.
That's fantastic. You know, I had a debate recently with someone who chooses not to vote, young person. And granted, the last couple of opportunities this person has had to vote have been rough. And I said, why don't you vote? Well, I don't feel like I know enough. I said, oh, okay, none of us know enough. But how do we access the information so that we can feel present enough to be able to vote, particularly voting locally? And I'm just amazed at the unwillingness to think critically, or the fear of thinking critically, or the perception that I don't deserve to think critically kind of blows my mind. And we're in a moment right now in the world where there's no space for that. Like you gotta jump in, you gotta join the conversation. And if you don't know what's being talked about, listen to the conversation and learn about it. I was learning from the episodes that I was listening of your podcast. I'm like, why don't I know that? I asked someone recently, because I'm an asshole. I said, we were debating his argument was, I don't think women have any more of a difficult time than men. I said, okay, when did the ERA pass? And he couldn't figure it out. He's like, when did it? Probably I'm going to say 75. I said, okay, well, that's part of the problem. It's never passed. So, and the idea that we are further than we were, but we're nowhere near as far as we need to be. And so it's conversations like you're having with Shay and your guests. I think it's really remarkable. I'm so proud of you.
It's crazy. Well, I'll get you one. It has passed and it was ratified in a number of states, but not enough states for it to be put into the Constitution.
That's right.
That people should be treated equal regardless of gender or sex. Right. And so we have people that want it, but we're getting blocked by certain states. And the crazy thing is that this is like this was right after voting rights that the Equal Rights Amendment was put into play.
Right.
But it is so important for us to know that still in our Constitution, we don't have that.
Mind blowing.
And did you also know that there is no brick and mortar women's history museum?
No, I did
not. There's history museums for aliens, an aliens museum. There's a chocolate museum. There's a museum of sex. Yeah. But there is no brick and mortar place that is a national women's history museum in America. We do not have that.
That is simultaneously mind-blowing and completely tracks.
Right, exactly. Like, shocker.
Yeah.
The National Women's History Museum exists online. They have like pop-up things.
Okay.
But they don't have a place that gives us the whole gamut.
Right.
And I also think that's just how women are valued in our society, or femininity is valued in our society. I'll give you an example, and this is interesting, and it maybe would be interesting to this friend that you had a conversation with. I believe there are double standards for men as well.
Okay.
And boys. And I having a son, I see those, right? Nobody shames a little girl for wearing blue. But little boys are shamed if they pick the pink shoes.
Right.
Like my little boy.
Mm.
And I think we have ideas about, these gender restrictions, right, these norms, that they are keeping us from being authentic. I hate when anyone says to my son who decides that he wants to be a witch for Halloween or Princess Peach,
right,
that's a girl costume, right, and he can't be that maybe he should be Mario instead.
Right.
He's 4. He doesn't know the difference.
Right.
He has no idea which colors are
Of
associated
course.
with what. Sparkles are sparkles. They're fucking sparkles.
Right.
Sparkles are awesome. He doesn't know yet that sparkles might be associated with women.
Right.
But we don't give girls the same flack for having a basketball blue, or, you know, there are things which, so it's made me realize that femininity in general is perceived as weak.
Correct.
And masculinity is king.
Yeah.
So if a girl wants to be more masculine, that's okay.
That's allowed.
But a boy being more feminine is not okay. And we don't value femininity in our society. And even when a woman is doing it all, she's got her big girl pants on in a way that is like the pantsuit that is in the imitate. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's that there's a whole thing there to be broken down. Right.
Yeah. I mean, gendering strength is part of the problem of the conversation, right? The idea that a strong woman is still somehow below a strong man in 2023 blows my fucking mind.
Right. I'd like a man to like push a baby out of his butt. Like, please. You talk about strength to me after that.
Thank you. Agreed.
And, you know, I also think, you know, when we talk about like, why are we devaluing this? Women have birthed the human race.
Correct.
Like, no one would exist without women. When we have all of these people talking about, well, God created man in his image and then the rib of the, sure. I'm like, no. Let's talk about it for a minute. There was a chicken and then there was an egg. But the chicken was always a hen. It was always a woman.
Right.
Right? So in this argument, it's like, to me, this doesn't
I don't understand.
Make sense.
Yeah.
Women are truly the only ones that actually can create human life.
Correct.
Out of themselves.
Correct.
We are the only ones that can create human life. So we're really calling God a man.
Create and nurture and support and develop. Yeah, it's mind-blowing to me. It is so extraordinary to have a conversation with you who I remember as being 17, and you are this beacon of critical thought and forward motion, and you're still funny as shit, and you're pursuing all of it, the songwriting, the comedy, stage. It was, I have to say, it was really thrilling to see you on stage again. I was like, oh, welcome home. Welcome back to the theater. I love to see it. I love to see it. And I'm so beyond grateful for your time coming and chatting with me and just to catch up. It's great to see you.
Well, it is great to see you, and it's great to chat with you. And we had so much fun.
We laughed.
I mean, I remember those bus rides back into the city from the Papermill Playhouse and those tapes we listened to. And I had so much fun with you guys. It really was. It was so, it was really fun. My tribe.
Yeah. And it was an education. I mean, listen, you were 17. You'd had an education for a decade already. But this picture of you that stayed in my house with a wig cap and a big smile and went Odom's bare ass in a dance belt right behind the two of us. I treasure that shot. I always have.
Oh, my God. He was such a hoot.
He is still a hoot. That was a funny group of people. It really was.
That really was. And Betty Buckley came to see the show. Did I tell you she came to see Cottage?
No. Amazing.
She did.
Amazing.
And
Good for her.
I saw her afterwards and she was so sweet.
Good.
And I was excited because I hadn't seen her in so long to get to tell her that what an impact she made on me.
Yeah.
I mean, I would watch her in the wings do Rose's Turn.
Yeah.
With Joe Mahoda, I would be standing back there.
Yep.
And it was different every night. And one night she ripped off her pearls.
I remember that night.
Stagehands were freaking out.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
It was going into all of the
We could do another episode just on Gypsy, you and I, because there were so many events that happened. This was pre social media, so there was a lot. There were a lot of stories.
God.
Yeah.
But I will tell you that watching her, I was like, oh, right.
Masterclass.
That's acting.
Yeah.
That rawness, that like, I wasn't sitting down, but I was on the edge of my seat. You know what I mean? I was like, oh my God, literally anything can happen. Literally anything can happen. It was terrifying to watch her and so exhilarating because she was unhinged and raw. And there was nothing about her that wasn't just inside of it and being it. And I was like, yeah, this is how fearless we must be.
Yes.
This is how raw we must be. This is where we have to go. And I never forgot it. Yeah. She doesn't realize what an impact she had on me. Even when I was singing so much better in Legally Blonde and I just didn't give a shit at the end, there was a part of the performance that has that little bit of rawness and anger and revenge. And I'm like, that was like my Betty Buckley.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a danger in that work. And that's what's exciting.
Danger. Yeah. Danger. Yes. Danger, Will Robinson, but Betty Buckley, like, I dare you to be that dangerous.
Yeah, absolutely. People ask what it was like, and I said, I didn't have a lot of like scene work where I'm looking at her, but I did have some, and it was like looking into the eye of a hurricane. It was the most thrilling stage communication I've ever experienced. And you never knew what the fuck was going to happen. It was great.
She was so totally connected. It's like, that's the only goal. Fearless and connected and listening and like, what?
Yep. Force of nature.
Lord, who cares if you've got a problem with your costume? Who cares if you're an asshole to somebody?
Right.
You're doing that on stage.
Thrilling to watch. And the audience responded to that. They knew they were there to see something special. Yeah, it was incredible. I've got to let you go. We're at half hour and I love you. I miss you. It's great to see you. Thank you for coming on and being with me. I appreciate you. I hope I get to connect with you again soon. Bye.
All right, that's half hour.
Thank you, half hour.
Boxland Media. Think big.